Hi everyone, it's Celeste, and this video is a ranking of the Book of the Month books that I read in 2021. So what you see on the screen is the Book of the Month books. There are 18 of them, and this is the order that I read them in. Not necessarily even the order that I received them from my Book of the Month boxes, but just the order that I read them in. And you see that I've got like 3 rows of 6 because that's symmetrical. So what I'm going to go through is rank them. I'm going to show you each row. So we're going to go through all 3 rows and then give you guys a chance to hear why I ranked them the way that I did. Okay, so let's get started. So the first row, you see the 6 books that I ranked the highest. The first one is The Death of Vivek Oji by Akwekwe Emezi. I gave it 5 stars. The next one is The Night Swim by Megan Golden. I also gave it 5 stars. The third one is A Burning. I gave it 4 stars. Then you have The Love Hypothesis. I gave it 4 stars. And then Queenie, I gave it 4 stars. And then The Unraveling of Cassidy Holmes, I also gave it 4 stars. So the highest ranking book of these 18 is The Death of Vivek Oji. So The Death of Vivek Oji, the reason that I marked it as the highest of all that I've read, because it hit on a lot of tough topics. It was memorable. I still think of what happened in that book and the characters that were in that book. It is set in Africa, and you're dealing with a set of cousins who are very close. They're basically raised like brothers. And one of these young men, it becomes clear that he is bad. He's exploring his gender and his identity, his sexual identity. And the issue is that where they live, it is dangerous to your health, to your life, to be anything but what's expected. And I think that what really helped with this book was how the different point of views, sometimes when books jump from different point of views, it's hard to understand. But this one, the different point of views really helped make the story impactful. And I think out of all the books that I read from my 2021 Book of the Month books, this is the one that I would recommend that everybody should read. So the second book in this ranking is The Night Swim by Megan Golden. This book is generally a book that I would not like because it deals with like a courtroom situation, and I just do not like legal thrillers. However, this book played more on the mystery of what happened, and it was very interesting as far as like figuring out what happened with the characters in a crime that happened in the past, as well as a crime was happening in the present day. And I really felt like the treatment of the topics and the characterization was excellent. Trigger warnings for sexual assault, for sure. But yeah, and another thing that I think helped with this, and as well as the previous book, I used the audiobook along with reading it, and I think that also helped with my enjoyment of this book. So the next book is A Burning by Megha Majindar. This one is set in India and real present day, I guess, because you're dealing with social media and texting, and it also is multi-perspective. And I, just like with The Death of Vivek Oji, this book has stayed with me. It deals with important themes of justice, identity, struggling with doing what's right, whether it helps you or harms you. And then the ending just was amazing. Like, I'm still thinking of this book even now. And so I ranked it after the others because while this is an amazing book, this was a debut, so I can't wait to see how the author will improve on her craft in the next book that she publishes. So on to the fourth book of my ranking, which is The Love Hypothesis by Hazelwood. This was one of my more recent reads, so it's a little fresher in my mind. This is Kylo Ren and Rey, like fan-based, inspired fan fiction. It's a romance. Have realized that over the course of the year, I do better with Book of the Month romances than I do with other pieces from Book of the Month. But what really struck me with this was how well the characters were done. But I also enjoyed like the side themes dealing with women and issues in the STEM community. And this one is just like, it was fun, but it also had like little pieces, little particles of things that gave you something to think about. Okay, so the next book is Queenie by Candace Cardi Williams. This is a book set in London, and it deals with a young single woman who's basically trying to find her way in the world, dealing with, past traumas and such. I've heard it compared to Bridget Jones's Diary as far as I don't know, so I guess some of the characteristics of some of the characters and the way things play out. But what I felt very strongly in seeing with Queenie, she was dealing with ways of coping with trauma, and I think that was very important representation. She was also dealing with issues of her race, her heritage, and especially in her interactions with her family. So if you're sensitive to like family dynamics, that might be something that's triggering. But I realize this might be a controversial one because whenever I was looking at it, back when I read it fresh and looking at it on Goodreads, there were quite a few people who did not care for this book. But I'm not one of them. So yeah, it ranks pretty high in my ranking. Okay, so the last book on this top row, is The Unraveling of Cassidy Holmes by Elissa R. Sloan. This book is set in the early 2000s, late 90s, early 2000s, when you saw a rise in like these pop bands, boy bands, girl bands, what have you. And I really enjoyed this because while it gave me nostalgic vibes of, hearing about like the lives of these young people in this situation, in these boy bands or girl bands, but also had, interesting topics that played into it. You saw like disordered eating and fat shaming. You saw like sexual assault. You saw like all kinds of things that it was more than just about these pop stars. And I really feel like that it was especially well done with the alternating point of views. Like so far this past year, with my Book of the Month books, I've done really well with these alternating kinds of points of views. And this is another one that when you go and look at the reviews, there's some people who don't like this very much. Maybe it's the nostalgia for me that liked it because I am roughly about the same age as the people the title characters in this book, but I enjoyed it. I thought it was pretty well done. This is also, I believe, a debut novel. Okay, second row. So we're focusing in on the second row. You've got Malibu Rising, One to Watch, The Ex-Hex, Circe, Arsenic and Adobo, and The Silent Patient. Okay, so the first one I have on this row is Malibu Rising. And I feel like a lot of people read this book this year. And a lot of people raved about it, and then some people not so much. I felt like it was sort of middle of the road. If I had to like rank it amongst the type of books that Taylor Jenkins Reid has written, like of this style, I would say that Evelyn Hugo is still number one. And I think that Daisy Jones and the Six was probably just a smidge better than Malibu Rising. Again, Taylor Jenkins Reid does really well with all these different characters that she's juggling, and she just really captures the time and the spirit in these past locales. Also like the ties that she had with Evelyn Hugo in this. And so, yeah, like you see like connections to her other works, and that's just like fun little Easter egg stuff. But yeah, I'm glad I read it, and I can't wait to read what she publishes next. Okay, so One to Watch by Kate Stayman London is another romance. It is about a plus-size woman who's like a blogger, and she gets roped into doing like a bachelor-esque reality TV show. And that whole premise just drew me in. I like to see representation of people of all different body types. So yeah, that was a drawing in point for me. But once I got into it, reading it, I was pretty happy with it. It's pretty middle of the road, I guess. Maybe not the best romance that I've ever read, but it definitely was very stable, very strong, and I would like to read from this author again. Okay, so now we're on book number 9 out of all of them, halfway done. This is The Ex-Hex by Erin Sterling, which is a pen name for Rachel Hawkins. This is a cozy romance, and it is set in like this witchy town. It has like the magical elements, so it's not entirely just, contemporary romance. And it has to do, the premise is that you had this young woman who dated this guy in college, and he broke her heart, and she was, crying and fussing and just mourning her relationship with him. And she's practicing witchcraft. So she drunkenly puts a hex on him, but she didn't really feel like it would actually work. Well, it turns out it did, but it was like a locational hex, so it didn't really come into play until he comes back into town and back into her life. And I really enjoyed the banter between these characters. This, again, was sort of just a general cozy romance, but some of it was kind of, I don't know, not so well done, but I really enjoyed it. It was fun. And I just got kind of immersed in like what was going on with it. So yeah, not the best romance I've ever read, but also like pretty solid. Okay, so the next book I have on the list is not a romance. It is Circe by Madeline Miller. I love retellings of fairy tales and myths and such. And for those that don't know, I teach high school English, and recently I've been teaching ninth grade. And in ninth grade, I teach the Odyssey. So I have read and studied her from the point of view of the Odyssey. So this was a real treat to get to see Circe in a different point of view, in a different aspect. The reason, but that sounds great, but the reason that I did not rank this book higher amongst my Book of the Month books is that there were some pretty draggy low points. Like, there were a couple of points once I got into it that were exciting, and then I would get to places where it was drudgery. I had to push myself to continue reading. So I hope that the next one will do better, but I'm glad I read it. It was enjoyable in the end. Okay, so the next book is Arsenic and Adobo by Mia P. Menensala. It is a cozy mystery, and it follows some of the general cozy mysteries that you see. Woman with her heart broken goes back to her hometown, and then, antics ensue. What I really appreciated with this was, the cozy mystery itself was general, but the characters were very rich, very vibrant. As you can see from the title, it's really incorporating like the culture and the food that is, happening within the family. The restaurant is a part of the setting. And so I appreciated that. Now, I believe this is part of a series. I may or may not read the next book of the series, but I'm definitely like, if I want to pick up a cozy mystery, I'll definitely consider one from this author. Okay, so last book on this row. This is The Silent Patient by Alex Micheladies. I did not fall to the hype. This was like a book club pick. So I read it. I don't know how I feel about these sort of psychological thrillers, and I don't know how I feel about the use of mental instability or mental illness to progress a plot. Like, I just don't know about that. Like not that I'm being extra sensitive about it, but I just wonder if it's always like very healthy, very good for us to experience that kind of reading. So anyway, The Silent Patient is interesting. I think a lot of people know about it because it was pretty darn popular in the last like 2 years, I think, or year or so, whatever. Um, it is about this woman who apparently kills her husband. She's found in the murder scene, covered in blood. There's a murder weapon right there. He's been violently murdered, and she refuses to talk, like to anyone ever. And so she is sent to an institution because they find her to be mentally unstable. And you get your point of view mostly from this one particular young doctor. And yeah, I'm glad I read it. I don't know. Again, it was good, but it wasn't like great. Not the best thriller I've ever read. Okay, so now we're on the last row. These are the last six. Um, you've got The Dating Plan, Firekeeper's Daughter, Recursion, My Friend Anna, Big Friendship, and What Would Frida Do? Okay, so the first on this row is The Dating Plan by Sarah Desai. Um, I liked it. I liked it. It was a cozy little romance. It had the fake fiance trope, like the fake dating trope. And they had a history. So like he had stood her up for the prom. So there was a little bit of like angst and history in the story between the characters. But I couldn't get over the fact that the female lead character was written as within that tropey idea of like not like other girls, like she's nerdy but super sexy. And I didn't really like that. I kind of had to force myself to finish this book. Sorry. Okay, so next on this row is Firekeeper's Daughter by Angeline Booley. I wanted to love this book. I so wanted to love this book. The cover is beautiful. It is, a native author, and I really wanted to love this book, but I didn't. So it's one of the books that disappointed me the most this year, if I'm being honest. The characters were well done, and the plot was interesting and compelling. I think what the problem with this book is it was darn near 500 pages, and I don't think it needed to be that long. I think that it needed to have entire scenes and chapters and small like subplots taken out for the good of the health of the rest of the novel. So I'll see what if this author publishes again, I'll look into it. But if it's close to 500 pages, I'll probably will skip it. So initially, I picked this book in my Book of the Month picks early on because I thought my husband would like it, and he did. He read it before I did. But then I decided I wanted to go ahead and read it. I had not read a Blake Crouch book, and I saw that one of his newer books had come out. So I used the audiobook along with reading the physical book. And this book was okay, but it's what I would put in the category of dude book. It's a book written by a dude for other dudes. And I don't think the female characters were written very well. And I mean, if that's the case, then a book isn't going to rank very high with me. Okay, so the next book is My Friend Anna by Rachel Deloach Williams. And this is like a true crime book about the fake heiress lady in New York who was scamming these like 1% people, these creatives in New York, when really she was not an heiress. She came from low beginnings or whatever, and she used her charisma to basically mooch off people until the very end. I think she's in prison now. But my issue with the story itself was interesting, and to hear what she did, how she did it, all that. But what got to me was the tone that the author used. The author was one of the people who was, swindled by this person, and there was a very whiny tone, and I just, a very like angsty, whiny tone, and there was a bit too much of that for me, and so yeah, this one didn't rank very high. Okay, this is another nonfiction book that I wanted to love. This is Big Friendship: How We Keep Each Other Close, and it's written by Amina Tissot and Anne Friedman, and so they're like co-authoring it together, and they're writing, and they also have a podcast, but the name escapes me, but they've been friends for a long time, and they basically are writing about their ideas of what it means to have a big friendship. And the problem with this one is I liked some chapters from one of the authors, but not from the other author. Like, I just didn't gel with her personality. And I just felt like, who cares, right? Like, I just wasn't pulled in. I wasn't drawn into it. And it was very forgettable for me. So there we go. And here we are to the very last book of these rankings. What Would Frida Do? A Guide to Living Boldly by Ariana Davis. This is sort of a self-helpy nonfiction kind of book. It's like part biography on Frida Kahlo, but also part like, I don't know, like self-help guide, I guess. Like, you would read a section that would talk about some aspect of her life, and then you would read a section, and that's how it was. It was basically in like chapters with sections. There was, and I learned a lot about her, but I don't know, like that was, like I wasn't sure what this book was trying to do, and also the writing style of it. It was written in the style of like basically a high school paper. Like, it just didn't have an elevated enough style for the publishing, I don't think. And yeah, I it's so forgettable. Like, I don't even remember what it was like. And I think I only gave it like 2 stars. So there you go with that. Okay, my dears. So here we are, finally talked about all the books. And what you're seeing on the screen is the books in order of ranking. So you see that my first books were like, The Death of Vivek Oji, all the way down to What Would Frida Do? Yeah, so I hope you enjoyed seeing how I ranked these or whatever. I might do this video again for my 2022 Book of the Month reads because I'm still a member of Book of the Month. Let me know down below what's your thoughts on any of these books. Do you think I rated any of these unfairly? Let me know what you think. If you like this video, please give me a thumbs up and consider subscribing, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.